Hello, everybody, and welcome to Authentic Points of View. I am Danielle Boer. I always forget to tell you that when I have McKenna with me. But as you see, aw, she's not here again. So we just got back from Tennessee. If you don't know, I live in Georgia. And we just got back literally like 30 minutes ago. And we've been gone the whole weekend. And she's been screaming. I've been screaming. She was in a competition and she was screaming. Well, we cheer on everyone, of course, but our high school team, we were cheering them on and everything. And so we get in the car and she's like, and she couldn't talk. So so here I am. Can't do an interview if you can't talk. It would be really weird and probably kind of rude, and it's not fair to the guest or to anybody else. So I'm very excited about today's guest for many reasons, which she probably doesn't know why, but she'll find out soon. So let's introduce her. Rebecca Engle is a neurodivergent speaker and author. She is dedicated to raising awareness and understanding of neurodiversity. And if you know me, that's important to me as well. So, welcome, Rebecca, to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for being so flexible and awesome. We were originally going to go at 3 o'clock, and if anybody knows me, I'm transparent and authentic, as it says over there somewhere. But we were going to go at 3. That's the normal time, but we definitely wouldn't have been back in time at all. So thank you so much for changing the schedule. I appreciate it.
Of course, thank you.
You're welcome. So, I have been following you, and you are an awesome young lady. And so I can't wait for the audience and to hear all the things that you have accomplished and how you're helping people. So, how was your childhood, and when did you get diagnosed with autism or whatever your diagnosis are? How old were you when you got diagnosed?
Yeah, sure. Um, my childhood was pretty good. I had a pretty normal childhood. Military kid, grew up
Me
with
too.
very supportive parents. Um, and When I was 3 years old, my mom kind of noticed that things were different, for sure at that point. Prior to that, she noticed things were different. I wasn't making any typical talking observations at, 1.5, 2 years old. Most people by 18 months, they're kind of mimicking, and I wasn't doing any of
Mhm.
that. I was just screaming at the top of my lungs.
Right.
So my mom noticed something was off. I was diagnosed actually when I was 3 with sensory processing disorder, speech apraxia, auditory processing disorder, pretty much everything but autism.
Wow.
Mostly because my parents didn't want the autism label at the time due to the stigma. In 2005, there was a very, very big stigma around the label.
Mhm.
So 2004, 2005, my parents did not have the label put on me, but I was diagnosed with everything that now falls under the autism spectrum in the updated DSM. At 22, which is recently, this past November, I actually went to a psychiatrist and got an updated diagnosis and was diagnosed with both ADHD and autism level one, uh, high level one, low level two.
Wow. So that's so awesome. So my son, and I say it's awesome, not in a, I don't mean to be like negative and say it's awesome, but the fact that your parents like advocated for you. So I'll tell you my story. My son is basically the same age as you. He's 21. He'll be 22 this year, though. And he got diagnosed when he was diagnosed with ADHD at 4, then diagnosed with like mood disorder and all those kind of things, maybe at like 7 or 8. But at 5 or 6, he got diagnosed with what they called Asperger's back when you guys were young.
Mm-hmm.
And he went to occupational therapy and he had a hard time. He had like, so they never diagnosed him with sensory, just order or whatever, but I'm sure he had it. But like he had this perception thing where like things didn't cross in his brain. So everything was like this. And so he had to go to occupational therapy to read, and he was in the astronaut program, which was really cool. So a lot of their things that they did was like crossing and all that stuff because he didn't see things like that. I'm pretty sure he's dyslexic, never got diagnosed with that either. But yeah, so I think it's awesome that your parents were like, no, because I didn't. No offense to me, but I was just like, okay, it's a diagnosis, you know. Um, but he had been getting help since he was 4, and I was a single mom. I don't know how I went to all the appointments, but what we did. So that's really great of them. I also grew up in the military. My dad was in the army. What was your parent in?
Both my parents were in the Air Force.
Oh, that's so awesome. That's so cool. So this is not what I was going to ask, but why not? Thank you for their service. And um, what's the coolest place you were stationed?
So my travel experience was actually pretty lame.
Oh,
My mom left before I was born, and my dad, um, he retired when I was in the 6th grade. I went from Oklahoma to Florida, back to Oklahoma to Texas.
oh.
So honestly, I wish I had some crazy story, but I've really only lived in 3 states and only really remember two at full. So.
Okay. So I was born in Hawaii. My story is a little
Mhm.
different. I was born in Hawaii. I lived in Germany twice. I lived in Maryland twice. We moved to Florida and California for like a couple months. Like it was weird. I don't know. I was a baby. I don't remember any of that. But yeah, so I was very blessed and excited to live in Germany. It was my favorite place. And we used to go to different countries all the time. And it was really cool. Like it was an awesome, very awesome experience. I really enjoyed it. Um, so, all right. You're so awesome. And I can't believe you're I can believe it because my kid, like, I could be your mom's age. I'm your mom. I could be your mom. Okay, so my son that's your age, you guys kind of were going through the maybe not the same thing, but like kind of navigating things at the same time. Um, when did you become so passionate about helping others? Because you're very young. So, like, when did you start on that journey?
I think I've always been passionate about helping others. Even when I was in therapy as a kid, my mom jokes around because I was always kind of helping. Like, I would end up taking over the whole place and start telling the older kids what to do. And so, like as a little kid, I was always like, oh, can I be the helper? Can I be this? I was the teacher's pet.
Yeah,
I was, dressed as your teacher day. I dressed like my teacher and then followed my principal around all day. Like that's the kid I was.
that's how I
Um, I think when I noticed it and that I was more passionate about it than other people though was middle school.
mhm.
Uh when I got to middle school, I was at a brand new school. Nobody had ever been there. Like it was the first year it was open and I was the first inaugural 6th through 7th 8th grade class. So I was the first like set of 6th, 7th and 8th grade all at one school. And I became like the student council secretary and the president and won the Presidential Service Award 3 times, all 3 years. And I feel like that's kind of where I realized I was like, yep, this is kind of my passion to serve. I became addicted to volunteer work in middle school. Followed that chain through high school. I graduated high school with something like 7,000 volunteer service hours over 6 years.
Sheesh.
Um, and so I feel like that was definitely my awakening in terms of wanting to help people, specifically people with special needs. That awakening happened my senior year.
Okay. So, when you say your awakening happened your senior year, did something happen in your life to spark that, or did you see somebody go through something, or what was that change of? And also, I was the same way. Uh, when let me finish. See, look, hello. When I don't finish questions, but I will, I promise. But I was the same way. And I when I was younger and my son was little, people would say, okay, which one of his parents has ADHD? Which one of his parents has autism? I would go, none of us. I don't know. Like, I didn't get diagnosed. And so I was the same way of you explaining how you were. That's how I was. I would literally like drive the teachers crazy at recess because I wanted to hang out with them instead of play with the kids. Like I was helping all the time. My daughter helps all the time as well. But I was like helping all the time. I wanted to be like, oh, I volunteer for everything, but I did not have 7,000 hours. That's really cool, Becca. That's like way a lot. But so I love that about you. Now I forgot the question. Isn't that funny? Let's see. Oh, what sparked like that in your senior year?
Yeah, so I was a band kid I skipped the 11th grade. So for some context, I
Wow.
did 3 years of high school, which is why I was like over 6 years. So ninth and 10th grade, I was in the band program. And um due to my sensory issues, I hated marching. I would get overstimulated. I couldn't memorize my spots. For those of you who have marched, you understand. Because you're trying to play an instrument, you have to memorize about 400 different spots to march to, while also moving and doing dance moves. And then my band was also number one in the whole entire state of Texas, the
Wow.
state of Texas, but it was also number one in the whole U.S. So when I
Wow.
was in the program, so we were both number one at the U.S. level and number one in the at the state level. So there's a lot of intimidation. And so I would get overwhelmed, overstimulated, and I just couldn't do it. And what I noticed was all the kids that were becoming alternates or backups for the shows were also neurodivergent. They were the kids on IEPs. They were the kids on 504s. And I knew it because we all talked about it. I was not on an IEP or 504 at this point in my life. I got off mine in fifth grade because my IQ was higher and all my speech impediment went away. So they were like, "You're good, you'll be fine." And I was like, "No, no, I'm not." But I noticed that, and then I always wanted to be a pal, which is like pretty much you go to the elementary schools and you help a kid that is going through something.
Yeah.
And that doesn't have to be a kid with special needs. It could be like a kid who's experiencing divorce, or a kid who's experiencing some form of, foster care, like, or a kid who's just struggling academically, kid who doesn't like school, right? And you just get to have a weekly conversation with them for about a half hour and help them out.
Oh.
And it's a program here, in the state of Texas. I don't know if it's everywhere, but, um, great program. And I applied for that because they only choose 50 kids, and my senior class had 900. So
Wow.
being one of 50 of 900 is, not common. um, and so I was selected, and then obviously I was nervous that I wouldn't get selected because it's very rare that I got into things. And the program was also at my middle school, and they were like, "Yeah, you're not popular enough," was their excuse for not allowing me in middle school. So I was
Wow.
like, "Okay, like, had a hard chance that I'm gonna get in high school. Like, that's gonna change anything?" So I went and applied to the Ready Set Teach program, which is a program for people who want to be teachers. And I'll be honest with you, I had no interest in wanting to teach. Um,
Cool.
I wanted to work with kids, and I wanted to build things for kids. Like, I wanted to help, like, maybe own a business making things for children, like toys or entrepreneurship or something. Marketing was kind of my route. But I wanted to market specifically for a child friendly company, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, and I had no interest in teaching. And as I did this, I was in a gen ed class with 18 kids on the spectrum,
Mhm.
and 4 kids that were considered neurotypical by the end of the year,
Wow.
during COVID. And I loved every minute of it. And I was like, I need to become a teacher. So I started applying to education programs, and Yeah, so I guess it was just my experience in the band program and my experience in the classroom that I saw, things, and I was like, "Oh, that won't work for a kid with autism," or "Oh, that won't work for a kid with ADHD." And then I got really interested in how can I fix this? How can I make this change? And
Mhm.
started going crazy into research. And so, yeah.
Wow. Gosh, you're so awesome. So let's, I have a few questions and I'm trying to, because I'll forget if I, but I, if, because you talked about really good information. So if somebody doesn't know, and they might know, but the
Mhm.
sensory processing, can you kind of go into that about, um, my son hated loud sounds, like really
Mhm.
loud sounds. Some people texture, some people like it could be a lot of things. But could you
Mhm.
just explain in your instance, like you said about the marching, but what else is the sensory processing disorder? Like what else does it entail?
All of your senses, so your sound, your touch can be anywhere. Your all of the things you can feel, uh, touch, sound, uh, really anything that I can feel, see,
Taste.
that comes into play. So even with things like taste, it's really difficult because you got all of it mixed together. You're
Mm.
touching the food, you're seeing the food, you're eating the food. There's textures. You're tasting it. Um, but with marching, I was listening. I was trying to see where to go. I was trying to think. There's all this stuff going on, and then you had the auditory processing disorder, which is your ability to hear the information coming in
Yes.
uh and process at the same time. So I was always like 20 seconds late.
Yeah. So with the auditory processing disorder, I've never been diagnosed. Uh, and I can't diagnose myself. I'm a nurse, but I'm not a doctor. And plus, you don't diagnose yourself anyways. But yeah, so I never realized ever in my life because my son's different than me. And I interviewed an awesome ADHD coach. He is amazing. He also has autism and ADHD, but he found out at 35. And but he is hilarious because I said, because girls and boys are different. And he thought that was the best thing ever. He was cracking up. I was like, I didn't know boys and girls are different. And he's like, ah. I was like, I meant with their, So my son was so hyperactive that he rocked back and forth since 2 months old. And he has autism
Mhm.
and ADHD. Um, but I wasn't like that, right? So I wasn't like that as a kid. And I'm like, when everybody's asking me if I have, I'm like, huh? No. But with the auditory stuff, I'll say for me, and I'll ask you how it is for you, but you said it would take you 20 seconds. For me, I will hear something so obscure, like so ridiculous. Like it will be like elephant dinosaur nuggets or something, right? And then I'm like, I have to stop and think there's no way they could have said elephant dinosaur nuggets. And then it
Mhm.
would be I love nuggets or something. I'm just making up stuff.
Mm.
But like I hear it wrong and then I have to process it. And then it comes to me like in a delay, like you said. It's very, I don't know. But like within a few seconds, maybe 20 seconds, then I will understand what it is. And sometimes I have to, when I didn't realize that that's what was going on, I would ask, did you say something, something? They would be like, what in the world are you talking about? And then after so many times finding out that that was not right and I was wrong. So then it's like after a while, the delay, I hear it the correct way. And then
Mhm.
I go, oh, okay. So when that happens for you and you're on a delay, how did that affect? Did you still stay in the program? So you did it ninth and 10th grade. And since you didn't march, what happened? Like, what did you do?
I was the soundboard person, so I controlled all
Oh,
the technology on the field. So we had like 7 microphones and solo microphones and like the DJ board, and I controlled the whole field.
wow. For the number one band? Whoop, whoop.
Mhm.
Good job. That's a lot of pressure.
Yes,
Wow.
I had to get the whole field set up in a minute and 30 seconds. So yes, it was a lot of pressure.
Oh my gosh. That's such a short amount of time. Oh my gosh. Wow. All right. So we have a lot in common. I was in the band too. I so what did you before you did the soundboard stuff, what did you play?
I was a trombone player.
That's so cool. My oldest son played trumpet.
Okay.
My second son, the one with the diagnosis, he played trumpet for 5 seconds, but really just didn't go to class because it was too much. And I don't even know why he picked trumpet because it's so loud and he does not do well with loud noises, never
Mhm.
has. And but he picked that, I guess, because his oldest brother played. My third son played um flute, and then
Mhm.
my daughter plays clarinet, and I played clarinet and tenor sax. I'm trying to think which
Cool.
sax I played. And so that's really cool. Trombone. So did it affect you? Because brass is loud. Like they're
Mhm.
very loud. So how did you kind of navigate through that, like through being in that section?
I think most of the time I feel like I eventually just got used to it because most of the time, first of all, I think the best part was I was in the back.
Oh,
So I
good.
feel like if I like as a trombone player, you're kind of in the
Yeah.
back, you're low brass, so like you don't
Right.
hear
Because
anything
you're,
from the front.
yeah.
And then the trumpets were next to me, but
Okay.
like to the right, so like all their noise was going towards the front.
Okay.
And then really the only thing I had behind me was a tuba player, so I feel like I kind of it wasn't that bad.
Okay.
And most of the time I was so hyper focused on the actual instrument that I kind of zoned out.
Yeah. So my daughter is, clarinets and then trumpets are behind. I don't know why they do it that way. Usually it would be like saxophone, clarinets like on one side because they play usually the same thing and then over there. But
Mhm.
the trumpets are so loud for her, and we're gonna try to get her into the doctor because she might have ADHD as well, and she does not like loud noises as well. Um, but the trumpets bother her so bad that she was doing this in her concert
Oh.
because it's so loud, like, and it's blaring. It's like especially when they're at, say like a high C or something, like, like that's a lot. And so she was like,
Mhm.
and poor thing. Anyway, the clarinets don't bother her. It's just the trumpets. Um, but it's okay. She does great. I'm proud of her. She's awesome.
Mhm.
But also, that's the hard part is, and we'll talk about IEPs, because everybody, you know, learns differently, and especially neurodivergent. You need some accommodation sometimes. And I don't know how Texas is,
Mhm.
but when I was going through that with my son in Ohio, it was horrible. Like it was like the support wasn't there. Then we had to do it in Georgia. And I don't know. So when you're doing what you do, how do you advocate for people and kids that are on an IEP or maybe need one?
Um, in Texas, it really depends on where you're at.
Okay.
I feel like just in my city, we have 17 school districts. So, and that's just one city.
What?
And so, yeah, I know.
Gosh,
So that's Texas for you.
dang.
So it's very hard to say like this is how it is in Texas because I've
Right.
been a school district over and they have completely different types of special ed classes and I literally drove across the street.
Wow.
Like for example, my neighborhood divides 3 school districts. Yeah.
Wow.
So like if you went left out of my neighborhood, you would be in one district. If you went right, you would be in one district. And if you went a little further right and then took a left, you'd be in another school district. And it's all within 3 miles. So so and all three school districts have a different special education system.
Got it.
And to give you a rundown, one is they have three sped environments, special ed environments.
Hmm.
The other one has five special ed environments. And
Wow.
the other one has seven special ed environments.
Wow.
So
That's like a broad,
so
I mean,
yeah, so with that being said, some people separate autism behavior and regular behavior, like trauma behavior.
mhm.
Some schools have it all in one. Some schools do co-teach and in-class support. Some schools just do co-teach. Um, Co-teach is I'm modifying your whole assignment in whole. Like
Mm.
instead of being tested on this grade level standard, I'm taking this all of your standards 2 grades below, but you're still going to take the normal STAR test, which is our state standardized test at the end of the year.
Mm.
There's and then like the other one is I'm just going to help you do the grade level work. Like a teacher's going to modify it a little bit to make it a little easier, but it's still the grade level work. Like I may remove two answer choices from each question.
Oh.
So if you have four answer choices, you may only have two on each question rather than trying to choose from four. One of my modifications that I had in college was all of my tests were short answer response because I hated multiple choice. It made me overthink.
Hmm.
But again, I was still being tested like the rest of my peers in my classes. It was just I never had multiple choice after freshman year because I hated it. In classes that professors wanted to follow my accommodations. Which wasn't
Oh,
all the
I'm
time.
sorry.
Eh, I got through. I graduated. So
Yeah.
and I graduated early. So um
You always
so
graduating early. You go, girl. You're awesome.
um so it really depends on both the school district in which I work, we have in-class support, co-teach, behavior, and alternative learning environment and resource. And so alternative is self-contained, obviously. So you're around kids with disabilities. And this is also the school district I grew up mostly in.
Okay.
Uh, and then the other one is we're pulling you out of class sometimes to get you a little help. That's resource. And then the in-class support and co-teacher, how I described it, modified versus just helping you out. And then the behavior is all behaviors. Any trauma behaviors, autism behaviors, stimming, things like that. And so again too, the school also makes a big difference. I know for me, it was weird because getting off my IEP was almost seen as a accomplishment. So in high school, I really, really struggled. There was a point that they were actually going to retest me for special education my freshman year.
No.
Or asked about it. Like they were like, "Are you sure you don't want to go back?" And my mom was even like, "Are you sure?" But it was when I got off of it, it was like such a woohoo, you got off, you're finally escaped. Like it almost felt like if I went back, it was like going back to jail. Like
No.
pay your bond or you're going back to jail type vibe. But that's because that's what they made it sound like, you know?
Yeah.
Um, and so I almost felt going back on it, I would be shamed. Or everyone would know because I saw the special ed kids get pulled out of class and got, like you see it. And so sadly the stigma was so crazy when I was in school, and I think it's gone away a lot, at least from what I've seen as a special ed teacher. I mean, the gen ed kids now without disabilities beg to come to my room, and I'm like, oh, um because I'm a special ed teacher, and the gen ed kids are like, I want Miss Ingle, how do I get Miss Ingle? And I'm like, oh, which in my generation you never saw, nobody wanted the special ed teacher. I mean, I
Yeah.
remember getting pulled out of class and getting laughed at, and that was for speech therapy. Um, and so, uh, with that being said, I didn't go back on it because I was like, I'm gonna get bullied. So I just struggled my way through with all C's and was pretty low in my graduating class.
So how did you graduate early then if you were having like if you were struggling? And I'm sorry that happened to you. That's a shame because I think now it's way more accepting than it used to be. If kids need special, I believe, like,
Mhm.
even in maybe that's just where we are, but it seems way more accepting than it was when my son was little. My daughter is 11, so they're 10 years apart and big difference. But how did you go from struggling and making C's to graduating early?
Yeah. So, a lot of people think you need to be smart in order to graduate early.
Well,
Which
you
I
are
think
very
is
smart, by the way. You're very, very smart, but
um
go on ahead.
thank you.
You're
Which
welcome.
I think is a misconception because um I so my 8th grade year they offered Spanish, they offered health, they offered classes like that. And
Mhm.
those were considered high school credits.
Oh.
So I lacked art skills, right? Like I did band because I needed a credit. I did things because I needed a credit. Like I really genuinely had no interest in doing those things. Um I was required to have 26 credits to graduate. And so I knocked out health, which was a required credit in 8th grade, and I knocked out Spanish, which was a required credit, which put me at 1.5. And then band was considered both art and PE.
Mm.
So I also knocked out my PE credit because I needed 1 year of PE, and I knocked out an my fine art credit, which knocked out just from those, I knocked out 3.5 credits.
Wow.
And so when I was my high school classes, I had 6 other classes my freshman year, and that was the second of my language, all of that. And then my sophomore year, I had 7 classes like everyone else. Um, so that put me at 16.5 classes. Or yeah, no, 17.5. And I only needed 27 to graduate, or 26 to graduate.
Mhm.
So I was like, I'm at 17.5 and I only need 26. And I'm a sophomore. And everybody gets 7 credits a year. And so I kind of thought about it and I was like, okay, so I take 7 next year and I'm now at 24.5, and then I only need 2.5
Mhm.
my senior year. Like, why would I take 2.5 classes and take a whole year to do that?
Mhm.
So what I ended up doing was I looked at my schedule and I was like, all right, I'm going to sign up for government online, through on a homeschool program online. And then I'm going to do summer school for English and pre-calculus. And I was a year ahead in math, but I was also in regular math, like, but a year ahead. I wasn't in like an honors math class, but I was always a year ahead in math. And even though I got a C, it didn't matter to me because I was a year ahead in math. Um,
Wow.
so, um, when I looked at my schedule, they were like, "All right, you only need 7 classes." So I did 7 classes like everyone else and graduated and walked the stage. Because I did those 2.5 over the summer, rather than taking a whole entire school year to do 2 classes. Because my other option was to find random classes I could use to fill in the blanks my senior year. Because you could only leave 2 classes early. And I was like, well, I don't have interest in that.
Right.
I was like, can I like go to a community college and like no? Well, then I'm just gonna like I'm not gonna stay like. And so I graduated in the midst of COVID in 2020, um,
Wow.
and didn't get a graduation. I was supposed to speak at it and then lost that, and didn't get my graduation or anything. But I left and I went to college. But I kind of chose college in a rush. So, and then as for my uh college years, that story is something else. That's fun. I actually graduated early due to discrimination when I got to college.
Oh no.
So
So, do you want to talk about that, or you don't
I
have to?
can. I can.
Or it might help someone. That's the whole thing about this show is really
Mhm.
helping someone. It might help a parent with their kid. It might help a fellow teacher. It might help a child going through it. So
Yeah.
if you don't mind talking about what happened, how were you discriminated, and how did you
Mhm.
graduate early from discriminating? That's wow.
Mm. So I went to one college my first year of school, and I had a great experience, except it was very, very big. It was about an hour from home, and I had a leg disability, and it just wasn't a good idea. They were very accommodating with my disability, but it like my teachers were like, "Oh, your leg hurts today," or my professors, they were like, "Oh, your leg hurts today. All right, you can do class online." Like they were very accommodating
Oh,
at my
good.
first university. And so um life happened and I decided just due to the environment and community and stuff that I didn't quite fit in there. Um and at this point I had interned for Congress, my GPA had gone up much. And I had a really good resume and stuff. So I was like, maybe I can go get a full ride elsewhere. Like maybe I can go instead of going deep into debt. And so I got practically a full ride to a small private school in my hometown, and only paid like, $3,000 a semester for school, which is nothing. Um, and then I became an RA, so it practically became free. Um, which is a resident assistant for those who may not know. You help with the houses and dorms and stuff.
Cool.
So I did that. Um, and so my first year, I get there and they go, "We're not taking anything from your first year of college. You're gonna have to start completely over."
Wow.
And I was like, "Oh." They're like, "Yeah, we're taking college algebra and English, but that's it." I was like, "Oh." So I knocked out a bunch of classes in the summer. Literally took as much as I could. Just boop, 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 boop. And then what they didn't tell me at the beginning of the semester was that they mix. My last school did 2 years of core credits and then 2 years in your degree. This school mixed them. So you had like two classes in your degree, three core credits, two classes in your degree, three core credits.
Hmm.
So, or like two and two, right? So you may have taken English and then a teacher class. They didn't tell me that though. And I wasn't used to that because I was used to taking all of your like almost like 2 years more of high school, like an associate's degree, and then 2 years of your actual degree.
Yeah, like prerequisites. That's what I had to
Yes.
do for nursing.
Yes. So my this new college didn't do that. They did like mixing. And so um I was like, okay. And it was very, very small. The school only has like 9,000 students. So I was like, okay, okay, let's figure this out. And knocked out all these classes. And they were like, problem. You don't have enough core credits. So we can throw you in all these education classes and you're going to have 5 each semester, but you're going to be like way ahead. Like you're going to have to figure something out. And so I took 6 classes in the education program, except for one was a core credit that I needed that I couldn't have gotten at the community college or online or anything. And so I did 5 education classes with one prerequisite core class. And then they're like, by the way, you have enough program credits to apply for our education program. And you don't typically do that until your junior year, the end
Mm,
of your junior year. And I was a first semester sophomore. And so I was
wow.
like, okay, I'll apply. Like, let me do it. And so I applied, and they said, we don't like the way you communicate. We don't know you well enough because you're new. Even though the same people are the ones who told me I should apply. We don't think you're meant to teach. We just don't like you practically. But you can apply again next year. You may have a shot. And I was like, okay. So me being like, okay, I am new to the school. That's fair. I can get that. I can get behind that. You know, I was confused about the communication. So I went to a professor who I liked actually. And I was like, hey, how can I improve my communication skills? Like I was seeking advice from the people who control the program because I was like, maybe
Yeah.
there is something I'm missing. And she looked at me and said, you need to learn how to mask. And I
Wow.
was like, oh, like, oh. And I was like, okay, that one's new. Um, and she was like, you can't talk about your autism. And I was like, but when I'm learning about, you know, a child's development or whatever, like it comes out. Like, or if I hear, you know, a child with a learning delay or whatever, it comes out. Like I can't not talk about my own life. Like I relate. And I'm like, all right, like I'll talk about my autism less. So I really worked on that. Like I genuinely did not talk about my autism for a whole school year, which was very hard for me, especially because I was taking special education classes. And I reapply the next year and they say, "Yeah, we still don't like you, but we're going to let you in." And this was the time I'm supposed to apply. Like this was like the normal people pace. And they were like, we're going to still let you in because we think we can help you fix it. And I was like, okay. And so they sit me down in a meeting and they give me this whole list of bullet points of what I need to change. And one was like, um, you need to talk to your classmates outside of class. So I needed to befriend them outside of class. Keep in mind, I was under drinking age and they told me that I needed to join them at bars.
That's
Which
crazy.
illegal, by
What
the
in
way.
the world?
So I can't do that. I'm like, well, that's not a possibility. And then they're like, you need to hang out with them outside of class to build relationships. And I was an RA and they drank underage in the dorms, which as an RA, I'm required to report that. So instead of getting involved or even trying to be involved, first of all, they weren't inviting me. Second of all, I just said, oh, I'm not going to be there because it's something I'm not allowed to be at as an RA. I want to keep my job that's paying for my school.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm good. And then they were like, when you talk at a group table, instead of saying we, or instead of saying I, like what I would do is I would say, I said da da da. And then I would go, this student said, and I would say their name, not this student, but I would say that like their name. And I would say their name said da da da. And I would give them credit for what they said. And they were like, you need to say we and us said. You can't say I said this and they said that and they said that. And I was like, okay, like I'll work on that. Like they were like, but you're also going to have to take 2 extra communication courses and we are going to have communication meetings with you and you're going to have a mentor. And you're going to have to meet with that mentor and I was going to have to meet with like 6 different people. And I was like, okay, cool, let's do it. Like, I was like, let's do it. I really want to teach. Let's do it. I was like, I don't know another route there. I got a mentor. I did everything I was told to do. Um, and they came back to me and they told me that I wasn't culturally accepting. I wasn't socially accepting. I wasn't, they told me that I was very, very uh pretty and I was very intelligent, but that's all I had to offer.
Oh my gosh. I'm so
And uh I went to our certification person and I was like, "Hey," and who's very close to me. And I was like, "Hey, I don't know what to do with this. I'm stressed. I bawled my eyes out in her office. Scared I would lose my dreams." And she gave me an alternative certification program to apply to. And this is, by the way, they never had any of those meetings with me. All those people that were supposed to meet with me failed to ever meet with me again after that meeting. So I spent a year waiting for all these meetings to happen while student teaching, and none of it happened. And the semester before I'm supposed to start clinical teaching, which is that last semester where you're doing it like half the time, that's where they sat me down and were like, there's no way we're not letting you in. And that was October. And the deadline to graduate was October 10th. It's October 1st right now.
Mm.
I'm like, oh my gosh, like I need to figure out what to do. So I applied to graduate in December of 2023, which I was supposed to graduate in May of 2024. And I was like, all right. And at this point, I had added so many classes that I had multiple other minors that I didn't even want, like history and math and English. And I'm like, all right, I'm done. Like I applied for my master's program within the same week. I applied for graduation and I walked the stage because I was like, I'm done. So in December, I got accepted into my master's program and walked the stage and got accepted into my teaching certification program, which I just finished 2 weeks ago.
Yay,
And
congratulations.
now I'm a certified teacher. And I'm also teaching other people how to teach autistic people throughout the whole state of Texas. So, it's been fun, but so worth the journey, and I think it taught me a lot. So, I mean, at the end of the day, haters gonna hate, right?
Yes, they are. And you are so resilient and awesome. I love it. So, when did you become a speaker and an author? I know that you have a book, Step Into My Shoes. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So, when did you publish that book? And what was well, probably we already know your motivation because you just told us what you went through, but what was the kind of motivation into being an author?
Yeah. So, I always wrote poetry as my outlet.
Yeah.
It was kind of therapeutical to me, especially with all I went through in high school and college. Um, And I mean, I have a red notebook and it literally is labeled teenage thoughts. And it goes all the way back to when I was 16 and there's tears in the book. And I used it as an outlet and I saw the post on Facebook and it said become a published poet. I was like, "Oh my god, this is my moment." And I had always kind of had interest in writing a book, but when I read this post, I was 20. And I was like, all right, like let me put one of my poems in. And the owner of this site loved it so much. She was like, I'm putting you on a billboard. We're publishing you.
Wow.
And I was like, "Oh my god, like this is not what I expected." I was entered into contest. I've won money, $200 to be exact. And she was like, "We're publishing you." And then she published me again, and then she kept publishing me. So I've been now published in 6 of her books. Um,
Wonderful.
and I met a lady while I was selling her books, the poetry books. I met this lady who is a book coach at a networking event. And I was like, I really want to write a children's book about autism. I've been trying to find someone. And she goes, I'll sponsor you and teach you how to do it at no cost.
Oh, wow.
And she's like, I'm not going to charge you a dime. She was like, all I want is that we can help each other. And I was like, well, I'm down. Like, let me do it. And then I was like, all right, like, let's do it. And then from there on out, I wrote the book, released it this past October, which is a year after I published or I was in that poetry book. And then last summer, a woman came to me and was like, I want you to be in my anthology. And this woman has a few thousand following across the board. She's been on TEDx. She's very well known. She's performed in Hollywood. Um,
Wow.
and I was one of the 37 women in her book. Um, but it was all kind of unreal. Like I feel like it happened so quickly. Like I went from I'm gonna publish my poem on this site in October of 2023, which was also the first time I spoke on a large stage. Um, and then after that, like it just the opportunity started coming for me, and yeah.
That's so amazing. So something really important to me is that I always say for people to like never give up and always go for your dreams. And that's exactly what you're doing. So you talked about having to go to speech therapy and all the things that you went through as a kid. you went from that to now being a speaker, which is amazing. So, how old were you when you actually started like speaking and sentences and all that stuff? Like how old were you when you kind of like, I don't want to say, but I don't know how to word it. But like when you started to like actually communicate more verbally.
I was 5.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So, okay, so at 5 years old, um, how were you communicating? Did you have, we didn't have tablets back then. Yeah, we did we? I'm like, look
It was
how
my
old I
voice
am.
at that point.
Well, so did you say like, but before you were 5, let me say that, before you could, you sure were speaking verbally, but you weren't nonverbal, correct? You just,
I was
did you,
nonverbal until the
you
age
were,
of 4.
wow. So how did you communicate? Did you write notes or what did you do? Just so people know that
Yeah.
to kind of give them hope if their kid is nonverbal and look how amazing and well you're doing right
Um,
now.
I tried to find words, so I would like say random things.
Hmm.
Uh, Lots of screaming, lots of pointing, hand motions. Yeah.
Wow.
I didn't have like tablets and stuff, so
Do you remember a lot of that from when you were little?
not really.
Yeah.
Most of it's my mom who's been like, "Hey, you remember this?" And I'm like, "No." But once I started talking at 5, I never shut up. So
That's usually what the parents said. Once they started talking, like it just after that is
mhm.
yeah. So wow. So let me ask you this. When you became a speaker and you were on that stage for the first time, did you have like a full circle moment or was it like how did you feel in that moment?
I was nervous. I was very, very nervous, very, very scared. But I feel like it was also, every time I said something, all I heard in this every time I speak, all I hear every few minutes is wow. And it's all in like I'll hear one wow and then it becomes two wows and then it becomes like a whole room of wows. Um, it's funny because a lot of people are like, I had to pause because they kept clapping.
Aw.
And in my instance, I had to stop and pause because I kept hearing wow, wow across the room. Echoes of the word wow. And I think that's the moment I was like, yeah, I need to go on stages more. Like, this isn't everyone's clapping, I have to clap. I mean, it takes effort to physically use the word wow out of your mouth every few minutes, you know?
Yeah. Aw. So the power of storytelling is important to you, and that's awesome. So you, when you're hearing "wow," that would distract me too. So like, when you're, what's it's a great thing, by the way. And I'm actually getting into speaking more too. So I hope that I hear "wow." But how did you like gain like keep your train of thought or like stay on, because when you speak, there's most places are only so many minutes, whatever, your allotted time is. How did you kind of like redirect and refocus yourself to stay on the task?
Um, I should have, but at the time I was nervous and panicky, and so there was a lot of and I think I got the best advice from a lady who's been speaking, and she was actually the keynote at this event. She goes, "You have to think, don't say And so now every time I go on stage, I think, do not say and it's actually worked. So.
Oh, I'll think of that too because I, I the first time I did the podcast, so was 2022, and I had a producer at the time and they had their own show and all this stuff, and they wanted to get into, producing other shows and all this. So they used to edit it for me. And he said that I said so many ums. It was like 100 something ums in one episode. And I was like, what? No way. But now I have to be careful, even like talking now, because sometimes I say so like several times, or and, or so it's like not only so like now I think like, wait, how many times have I said that, and try to like keep myself together. But it is really, those are like filler words or whatever they say,
Mhm.
because when you like, do you have any advice other than that, of like how now, other than don't say in your mind, how do you stay like, because nervous is good, it means we're excited and we care about something, we have passion, but how do you stay like excited, nervous, but still do it and not quit? Because a lot of people get so nervous that they're like, I can't do this.
I feel like I need a slideshow because when I have a slideshow, it keeps me on track.
Okay,
I follow the slides and I'm like, all right, there's 15 slides. That means there's 15 things to say. Say them.
very good.
And when I get through those slides, I can kind of, I did it. And I think just, the world needs to hear my story because if the world doesn't hear my story, then it's not going to change. Like, my story isn't something that everyone has. It's not going through a car accident. It's not, uh, you know, going through a life changing, job interview. It's something that doesn't happen to everyone. Of course, there's people out there with similar stories, but
Yeah. So your story, and it does need to be told, and thank you for doing that.
um,
What's one thing that you would give advice for a kid right now? And you probably do because you're a special education teacher. Thank you for doing that as well. But what would you tell somebody right now that's listening, that's going through school and maybe they're struggling? Like, what advice can you give them?
I would tell them to believe in themselves, to push through, and to advocate for themselves. I always tell my students, you are your biggest advocate. I am not. I can say I am. I can teach you how to be your biggest advocate, but I cannot be your biggest advocate because I am only in your life until you leave my classroom.
Yeah. That's so true. That's the same thing with nursing, is that I am a patient advocate, but I always teach them and the family that they need to advocate for themselves, because I'm only there for this recovery period, and your whole life is, hopefully a long life with lots of years. So I'm just in there for a short, brief moment. And so that's really awesome advice. What grade do you teach? What, like, is it a middle school special education or high school, or how's
I am elementary, third, fourth, and fifth.
Oh,
I
that's
have the
so
babies.
that's so awesome. That's a really special and hard year. Like when they become 7 or 8 years old, I think it's like really, it's tough. But that's so awesome. If you could go back and tell your 13-year-old self something, what would you tell her?
You'll make it through and don't make the mistakes you have that long term harmed you, because I think I think there's little things I did in my life because of a mistake and I overcorrected, and then those things kind of got worse. Like the college change.
Yeah. Oh. Well, I'm so sorry that you went through that, but it taught you a lesson, and now you can help others and
Mhm.
speak up for them and try to share your story of, that's just horrible. But
Mhm.
now maybe they won't go through it because you're speaking about it, which is really awesome. It's really important, the for neurodivergent people to hear from someone like them, as opposed to a professor that's teaching, but they've never had a child that's neurodivergent. They're not neurodivergent. And so, I mean, it's you're very special. And I'm very, very excited and happy that you were here and speaking to us. Where can we find you?
You can find me on Instagram at Stitches Stanzas, or on Facebook at Rebby Crafts, Rebe Crafts, or you can find me at Becca Engle, or you can find me at Instagram also on at re02.20.
Okay. Can you message me those so I can add it to the show notes when I post it?
Yes.
Thank you so much. All right. Is there anything that you would like to say, Rebecca, that we did not cover? No? Okay. Well, thank you again for coming on. You're so awesome. You're really such a bright young lady who has changed the world already at 22 years old. I cannot wait to see how much you do for the world in the future and the children that you're impacting. So, thanks again, everybody. I will be back at 3 p.m. next week. Hopefully McKenna will be here, but it's up in the air. Who knows? But thank you again, Rebecca. You have a wonderful evening, and I appreciate you. Bye, everybody.
Bye.